Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode 1102, Cry Wilderness. I think there's a difference between a good, passable, or even above average Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode, and then one that just makes me laugh the whole way through. And that is the difference between Reptilicus and Cry Wilderness. In fact, Cry Wilderness is so fucking good and so hilarious that I would almost recommend it over Reptilicus 100%. And I liked Reptilicus, but Cry Wilderness is as close as this cast has gotten in 2 episodes, by the way, to a classic Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode, that it's quite fucking remarkable. But the other thing is, I think there's a lot of things they had to set up with Reptilicus to show the new show, to show the new things they're doing with the silhouettes, the rapid fire jokes, and everything like that. And certainly they made these out of order. They were written out of order. I don't actually know which one was the first one they wrote and all that stuff. But I can tell you one thing, is that this one gels magnificently well. I like a lot of the host segments. It doesn't have that amazing moment as the Reptilicus rap in the Reptilicus episode, but Cry Wilderness, with the riffing and with the movie, is amazing. Like, it was just hilarious, the amount of different kinds of references and jokes, which is probably one of the other great things about Mystery Science Theater. I talked about it in the Reptilicus review. They use all sorts of different kinds of humor in it because they have to fill an entire movie with jokes and references, but also the variety of references is really showcased here. It's such an interesting episode because the references in this are so varied. They reference sci-fi era Mystery Science Theater, they reference like a 17th century poetry, they reference everything, and it works hilariously well, and it kind of showcases what I always loved about the show, is just this wide library of knowledge of pop culture and literature and everything that kind of collides to make such a hilarious show. And Cry Wilderness showcased that better. And I think the whole show worked a lot better. The rapid fire thing was really going on in terms of the jokes, but there seemed to be more breadth between them. There are certain times where it just feels like they're hitting you with as many jokes as they can. They have that are pretty good for a certain section, but they all seem to hit. Like, almost, I laughed out loud more at certain sections of this than I did at all of Reptilicus. Like, I was just laughing pretty loudly, and there's only certain Mystery Science Theater 3000s that can make me laugh all throughout, and those are the ones that even the casual fan knows. I honestly think this is the better one to show someone because it just gels so well. The chemistry is there between Jonah and the bots in this one. It just works just so hilariously. And Cry Wilderness, which is a movie so obscure it doesn't actually have a Wikipedia page, which in this day and age is pretty crazy. A 1987 film directed by the guy who directed the segment on the train in Night Train of Terror, or To Terror, of Terror, To Terror, whichever, which is a really cool cult movie and a pretty crazy one at that. But this doesn't have any of the interestingness of that film. This is like a weird family-friendly Bigfoot movie, and it has all sorts of the makings of a movie that you can laugh at and have fun with. A Native American sidekick that keeps laughing at like almost everything in a weird way. It's also cool when they have host segments that directly reference things from the movie, and it just is hilarious because you're like, can't believe what you just witnessed. And there's a scene where the raccoons are going through all the food in this cabin. That's really funny, and them recreating it reminded me of when Mystery Science Theater works excellently well. They just had so much fun with it. It was actually fun watching this ridiculous movie with them, which I think is another part of the show. It's discovering these things. This is an obscure movie, one of the more obscure movies I've seen them find, and having this kid who's telepathically told by Sasquatch that his dad's in trouble, and then at certain times it just does feel like it's a series of scenes, and it's bizarre, and it doesn't quite make a lot of sense. And one line that keeps sticking with me is like, you can't spell dad without ADD. That was really great. This definitely gets me hyped to really want to watch more of them. I'm excited to watch the next one, which is called Time Travelers, because this was just such an amazing experience. You know, I think if there were 2 Reptilicuses, I wouldn't necessarily be as excited. I would still like that episode, but I wouldn't necessarily be as excited. But Cry Wilderness gives me the kind of episode where I'm like, I want to watch like 5 more because it gave me that much enthusiasm for it. So Cry Wilderness is the great episode that you gave money to. The spirit of it, it is that. Also, and I know I mentioned how it does references to sci-fi, certain sci-fi episodes. You also have a host segment where Professor Bobo, Brain Guy, and Pearl Forrester show up. And it's a weirder host segment because Jonah and the bots aren't in it, and it just is completely about Felicia Day's character, her relationship with Pearl Forrester and everything like that. And it breaks from the host segment kind of tradition. They don't actually do a letters thing, which they did in the first one, so I'm wondering what that was about. That was an interesting thing, and it kind of worked. It's certainly very Force Awakens-y in terms of just like a shout out to the fans. It was so quick. It was just one host segment that didn't really bother me. I think if they just have little host segments like this where somebody shows up, it's kind of fine. It's not like they're there the whole episode, like, or in a couple like Joel was when he appeared in the season 10 opener way back when. I think this worked a lot more naturally, frankly. Just doing a host segment, they do their thing, you understand their relationship within the lore. It seems that everything is canon. This isn't like Comedy Central happened and then sci-fi is ignored or something. It seems like they're very much into this being a part of the lore that has already happened, which I think is actually really great. And this almost felt like a really funny sci-fi episode in terms of its references and everything, but like Jonah is interesting because I've noticed I see pieces of Mike, I see pieces of Joel in him, and I think he's a really good newer third host to really take the fandom and kind of bring us all together and make another Mystery Science Theater, or at least that's what I'm getting from 2 episodes in. They didn't do as much standing up with the silhouettes in this one, which I think was good. Gypsy still does her coming down thing, which I don't love and I don't think is that funny, but apparently some people do. But the woman who voices Gypsy is one of the writers in the writer's room, which I assume is doing the riffs and stuff. Felicia Day helped write on this episode. Maybe this one just gelled a lot better, but it's so far my favorite. One of this season that even if people go, oh, I saw Reptilicus and I didn't like it, I would say see Cry Wilderness and then say something, because Cry Wilderness is just such a bizarre kind of a film and they really have a lot of fun with it, and I think it really showcases the best of what this show can do, and I think a good cast can really bring that out. I also like the invention exchange this time with the turkey theremin and the clock with Cookie Puss, which I've noticed Cookie Puss ice cream has come up twice now. I'm curious where that's going, and I found the invention exchange, because before it was just like Jonah just does it and they don't do the back and forth. I like where this is developing, but I think regardless of seeing how the show's going and everything, the fact that they hit one so far out of the park, I would say this is certainly as close to a classic as they've produced thus far. It really shows me how this is really working and really gelling and making it to be the enjoyable cult show and why I fell in love with this show in the first place. So I would say Cry Wilderness is really showing that this show and this new iteration of the show has a lot of potential and a lot of great potential. So if you're a Mystery Science Theater fan and you're not so sure after Reptilicus, I think Cry Wilderness will make you sure of it, because there's no way you can watch this episode and not laugh out loud and not have a good time, because it is that fucking good. It is the classic Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode that I think everyone who's probably working on this reboot hoped they would eventually produce, and they have successfully done it seriously with Cry Wilderness. It is a really great episode. I honestly wish they'd started off with that, because no one would be doubting this show at all if they watched this episode. So if you've seen Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode 1102 Cry Wilderness and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.